السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected elders and brothers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the very inception of time, Allah Ta'ala has created two forces simultaneously in this world. Allah Ta'ala has created truth and falsehood, vice and virtue, good and bad. And human being has to deal with these two forces. There are sound reasons why Allah Ta'ala has created both these forces. Sometimes a person might say that why didn't Allah Ta'ala only create truth, only good, and there was no vice and there was no evil. Now this is not the topic for today. But suffice to say that in Arabic there is a saying, الشيء تعرف بأصدادها. Something is recognized by its opposite. You come to realize the value of light by there being darkness. If there was no darkness, you would not have been able to value light. You would not have been able to see the benefit of light. So someone has beautifully put it in this way, that I have learned silence from the talkative. I have learned tolerance from the intolerant. I have learned kindness from those who are cruel and unkind. Yet I remain ungrateful to these teachers. So sometimes the reason why Allah Ta'ala has created is we realize the value by its opposite. Suffice to say that Allah Ta'ala has created both these things in the world, and we all search for truth and we all want to be on truth. But there are certain salient features of the truth. And there are certain features also about batil and falsehood, which we need to know to be able to chart our way in gaining the truth and staying away from falsehood. I would like today in the brief talk try and make mention of the salient features of truth and haqq and those of batil and falsehood, so that we can be closer to the truth and stay away from falsehood. 2 or 3 of them would be in a general sense, and 1 or 2 of them would be with regard to the present situation in Gaza in particular. Firstly, the first point, I will make mention inshallah of 5 points. The first point is we are living in a world where there is a certain moral or an immoral philosophy which has been carefully developed, which has become in many ways the dominant philosophy of the secular, liberal, secular world. It is called moral relativism. And anyone who has read will come to have come through this. It suggests right and wrong, good and bad, vice and virtue are relative concepts. And it has been put in this way. There is no normative moral principles which are intrinsically valid or universally obliging. They call it situation ethics. And they put it in such a way that right and wrong, truth and falsehood are like beauty, they are in the eyes of the beholder. And sometimes they use certain complexities of modern life to be able to enforce and strengthen their argument. Like for example, they will say, would you tell the whereabouts of your friend to a would-be murderer? Someone wants to murder your friend and he comes and asks you, where is your friend? You don't tell him you have committed and you have spoken a lie. You tell him you have become an accomplice to murder. So they triumphantly say thereafter, you see, there is no complete right and wrong. It all depends upon the situation you find yourself. But despite that, humanity hungers for a sense of right and wrong. And all of us know that. Many times a person will come to an alim and say, tell me what is right and wrong. Don't give me long, winded explanations. So we all want a sense of right and wrong, truth and falsehood, some absolute moral values. Looking at all of this that you find today, we thank Allah Ta'ala for the beautiful moral landscape Islam has given us. It has made things certainly very clear. This is right, this is wrong. And these things are such that they provide stability and security to our moral order. They provide absolute moral values, absolute right and wrong, truth with a capital T. That no one, no alim, no scholar, no Moulana, no person can change. It will always remain like that. Interest will always be haram. No matter how much the financial situation of the world becomes interest-driven. Immorality will always be wrong, irrespective if it becomes a norm. And this is something that we have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala furthermore has given us in the life of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam a perfect example which offers guidance for the complexities of our life. Islam avoids the pitfalls of offering few Boy Scout principles for our moral life, which find its way in a showcase rather than real life. So the first thing with regard to truth and falsehood, yes, there is something that is known as truth with a capital T, and we reject the philosophy that has been carefully developed, which is known as moral relativism. The second thing with regard to truth, by its very nature, by its very definition, it requires an uphill struggle. It requires sacrifice, self-control, patience, perseverance, obedience and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it at times requires giving up instant satisfaction for the sake of eternal success and satisfaction. We've seen it many a times. We see it in Rosa, we see it in fast. What do? You give up instant satisfaction for the sake of a greater good, for the sake of a reward. So that is the reality with regard to truth. Truth will always, and haq will always require sacrifice. Whoever thinks that he will be able to gain the truth and he will be upon haq without any sacrifice is living in a fool's paradise. This has been very beautifully explained in a long hadith in Jami'-ul-Tirmidhi. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when Allah Ta'ala created heaven and hell, when Allah Ta'ala created Jannat and Jahannam, Allah Ta'ala told Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, go and see the beauty which I have prepared in Jannah, and go and see the punishment of mine which I have prepared and which I have created in hell. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam went and he came back and said, Allah, you have created Jannah so beautifully and you have created it so great. There is no one whom you have created who will not desire and seek Jannah. And oh Allah, you have created hell in such a way. There is no one whom you have created that will want to stay away, will not want to stay away from Jahannam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounded Jannat and Jahannam with certain things. And he told Hazrat Ebrahim, now go and see Jannat and Jahannam. And Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came back and he said, oh Allah, now I'm afraid if people would be able to gain Jannah. And now I'm afraid whether people will be able to save themselves from the fire of Jahannam. And then the words of the hadith, it concludes with these beautiful words, هُجِبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ وَهُجِبَتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهْوَاتِ. Allah has surrounded Jannah with toil and effort. And Allah has surrounded Jahannam with the fulfillment of your desires, with apparent ease. So if you want to be on haq, you have to make a struggle against your ego. You have to make a struggle against your nafs and your desires. Follow your desires, you go straight to Jahannam. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu one day was asked, oh Ali, tell us how is it to gain Jannah? So Ali radiallahu anhu said, very easy. Put your one foot upon your desires, the next step is Jannah. Trample upon your desires and go into Jannah. So the second point with regard to truth and falsehood, which is important for us to understand, is truth requires effort. Truth requires sacrifice. Falsehood doesn't require much. Just follow your desires. Follow your evil impulse which Allah Ta'ala has created. The third thing with regard to truth and falsehood, which is very important, is that while truth will eventually triumph, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in the verse which I have recited as an introduction to the story, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. Say unto the people, O Prophet of Almighty Allah, Haqq has come. قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. And Batil has evaporated and has disappeared and has been destroyed. إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Batil and falsehood is a vanishing act. It is determined, Allah Ta'ala is determined to destroy falsehood. But sometimes you will not see it apparently. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he conquered Makkah, and as he was destroying the idols which were in the Kaaba and Baytullah, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam took his walking stick, and as he hit, and even some riwayat say he didn't even break, he just indicated the walking stick towards the idols, it broke, and he read this ayat, قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. That haq has come and batil has been eradicated. Batil is an eradicating thing. It is something that will be demolished. But in the meanwhile, many a times it will be that false will have great fun ridiculing truth. Therefore, truth will always attract people with foresight, determination, who have their sight on the final outcome. Sometimes you won't see the impact of it here in this world. Sometimes you will see people who are on truth, who have been defeated, and you will see people who are on falsehood. They are having an apparent good material life. They are having the luxuries of life. They are seeming to be dominant, but doesn't mean in any way that truth is wrong or falsehood is victorious. We will see it in the final outcome. Therefore, you have to be perseverant. You have to have perseverance. You have to be steadfast. In the meanwhile, sometimes you will be ridiculed. And if you ever want to understand this, look at the beautiful verse which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken about in Surah Mutaffifin. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا كَانُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَضْحَكُونَ. The criminals, those who are on falsehood, they mock at the people who are on truth. وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ. When they pass by them, they wink their eyes and they look down upon them with scorn and mock. وَإِذَا انْقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ وَانْقَلَبُوا فَكِهِينَ. When they go to their own people, their own group, they even mock further. وَإِذَا رَأَوْهُمْ. And when they speak to their own particular group of falsehood, the different alliances we see in the world today, the Western powers, when they say to the people amongst them, إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ لَضَالُونَ. These people who are on the Islamists, إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ لَضَالُونَ. They are on the wrong path. إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ وَمَا أُرْسِلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَافِظِينَ فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ. But on the day of Qiyamah, the people who are believers, they will mock at the disbelievers. So here in this world, you will find at times, there will be situations where the people who are on falsehood, they will have a good laugh and they will mock at the people of truth. Therefore, truth requires people of determination and people of courage and people of steadfastness. And let me just say with regard to this, that, and they say that the person who laughs last, laughs the best. Or sometimes, you say, jokingly, the one who laughs last, he has only got the joke last. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mention with regard to it. Therefore, when you are on truth, yes, be prepared to be called different names. But we will remain steadfast. For it will be the most ridiculous thing to leave the straight path for fear of being ridiculed. The most laughable act would be to trade truth for falsehood for fear of being laughed and mocked at. And the craziest deed would be to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowingly for fear of being called crazy. The fourth thing, and this is now more towards the present situation. Many a times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give falsehood a certain degree of authority and arrogance which they carry, which you will see. And many a times you will find truth will be materially weak. Not always. There are situations in history, for example, where truth has been dominant. In the time of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, who had a kingdom that has never been matched. Our beloved Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wasallam towards the end of his time. Not also in the beginning, because in the beginning of our beloved Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's life, there was weakness. There was a certain degree of helplessness, as I will go on to explain. So therefore, you will find certain times in our history where falsehood has been given dominance. They have that arrogance which they show. And very beautifully it has been explained in the Quran in the form of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in Fir'aun. And out of 30 chapters in the Holy Quran, Allah Ta'ala has made mention of this incident in 28 chapters out of the 30. And then you see the words of Fir'aun, the attitude of Fir'aun, which of course we all know is on falsehood. And look at his statements and compare it to the statements that you find today with regard to the people of falsehood. Inna Fir'aun ala fil ard. Fir'aun was arrogant and he had dominance on the earth. وَجَعَلَ أَهْلَهَا شِيَعًا. And do you know what Fir'aun did? He created people in groups. He made them into groups. And today we find the same thing, that the people who are in power and dominance, they make people into groups. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention, يَسْتَرْإِفُ مِنْهُمْ طَائِفَةً مِنْهُمْ يُذَبِّحُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيِي نِسَاءَهُمْ. One of the strategies of Fir'aun was, اقتلوا أبناء الذين آمنوا معه. Kill the children. Kill the children. 2/3 of the people who are killed in the Gaza are children. اقتلوا أبناء الذين آمنوا معه. Fir'aun said, kill the children of the believers. واستحيوا نساءهم. And leave the woman folk. Let them give birth to more children so that we can continue. You see, Fir'aun was in a situation. He needed slaves. He needed the working force. But yet at the same time, he was told that someone from Bani Israel is going to overtake and overthrow you. So what did he do? He started killing the children. And then when he was told that the working force is going to be destroyed, he said, okay, kill the children on 1 year, and on another year do not kill them. So look at the strategy of Fir'aun. Allah Ta'ala gave him power and authority. That doesn't mean he was on truth. Remember this. Sometimes Allah Ta'ala gives falsehood certain degree, a certain degree of dominance. But look at the way they have the arrogance. So one or two things with regard to Fir'aun from the Quran I will make mention of. وَنَادَى فِرْعَوْنُ فِي قَوْمِهِ قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ أَلَيْسَ لِي مُلْكُ مِصْرَ وَهَذِهِ الْأَنْهَارُ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِي أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ أَمْ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ مَهِينٌ وَلَا يَكَادُ يُبِينُ. Oh people, don't you see the beautiful civilization of Egypt that I have? And this river Nile running through Egypt. Am I better? Am I better? Oh, Musa alayhi salatu wassalam is better. وَلَا يَكَادُ يُبِينُ. Musa had a stuttering. He could not articulate himself. فَلَوْلَا أُلْقِيَ عَلَيْهِ أَسْوِرَةٌ مِّن ذَهَبٍ. If he was upon right, why didn't he have wealth? Where's his gold? Where's his silver? Today you find that people who are on haq, the people on haq, they will find, see, they might not have the resources. But the people who are on batil have this, and they take pride in it and say, look, we have more than what you have. Therefore, equating and thinking that because we are more successful, we are more worthy of being followed. That is not the way haq and batil works. Then look another place how Fir'aun made mention with regard to it. إِنَّ هَذَانِ لَسَاحِرَانِ يُرِيدَانِ أَن يُخْرِجَاكُمَا. Fir'aun was very good in changing the narrative. So what he told his people, إِنَّ هَذَانِ, these two people, Musa and Harun, يُرِيدَانِ أَن يُخْرِجَاكُمَا مِنْ أَرْضِكُمَا. They wish to take you out of your homeland. وَيَذْهَبَا بِطَرِيقَتِكُمُ الْمُثْلَى. And they are jealous of your way of life. Now look at that. What he was doing, he didn't make mention of. He enslaved the people of Bani Israel. He killed the children. Wholesale massacre with regard to the children. And what is he telling his own people? These are the people who are seeking to take you out of your homeland because they can't see your success. Can you see the similarities? Therefore, we need to be very, very clear with regard to truth and falsehood. And even if there is an apparent setback, it doesn't deter us with regard to our truth. It doesn't deter us with regard to the fact that Allah Ta'ala has created a truth. And even if there is setbacks, and even if there is challenges with regard to this truth, it doesn't mean that we are ever going to be compromising on the truth. And then the last point that I will make, and I will maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, is that truth and falsehood has got nothing to do with worldly victory or failure. Truth and falsehood has got nothing to do with victory, worldly victory or failure. Sometimes there could be a situation that you are on truth, but you have a worldly setback. And sometimes there could be that you are completely on falsehood, and materially, and in the war, or in parts of the world, you have victory. And let me give you a beautiful example with regard to it, that there was a setback in Uhud. Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Sahaba suffered a setback. There was a defeat in the war. But yet, isn't it not amazing that despite the setback, despite the challenges, Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Sayyidu Shuhada'i Hamza, the leader of the martyrs on the day of Qiyamah will be Hamza. And from which battle did he come? Karim said he will be the leader of the martyrs on the day of Qiyamah. He is successful. There is no doubt with regard to his success, despite the fact that he was defeated and he was martyred in a battle against the forces of Batil, against the forces of falsehood. And after the setback of Uhud, I want you to just look at how Allah Ta'ala addressed the believers. How He addressed Nabi Karim Sallallahu. It's something amazing. Yes, we all know what is truth and falsehood. The Sahaba and Nabi Karim Sallallahu was on truth, but they were defeated. And how did Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala console them and sympathize with them after the defeat, after the setback, which gives us great amount of lessons. Firstly, the first thing that Allah Ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ عَفَا اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ, Allah Ta'ala has forgiven them. Now, of course, we all know that the setback in Uhud, anyone who knows history, happened because of a misunderstanding. Sahaba left their post and Nabi Karim Sallallahu told them not to leave. So what did Allah Ta'ala tell them first? Allah has forgiven you. Well, we don't look for faults in the Muslim Ummah at the time of setback. We don't look for faults in the Muslim Ummah at the time of setback. I am surprised at people who have the courage as if they have wahi from Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that what is happening there is a punishment of Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Did Allah Ta'ala give you revelation? And in the setback of Uhud, what did Allah Ta'ala tell the Sahaba? Allah has forgiven you. That doesn't mean you must not introspect. And look at the words. In fact, there's almost 4 or 5 rukus. Allah Ta'ala in the 4th chapter only deals with the setback of Uhud. And Allah Ta'ala says, قُلْتُمْ أَنَّ هَذَا. You ask, why did the setback thing and why did it happen? قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Look at yourself. Introspection in any situation is necessary. But Allah Ta'ala has forgiven you. Then look at what Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't lose heart. Don't be despondent. وَأَنْتُمُ الْعَالُونَ. You would be successful if you are believers. Subhanallah, when I look at this verse, I say, Subhanallah, what a great verse. At the time of setback, at the time of the setback for the people of Gaza and for all of us who are feeling the pain, this is such a great verse. Don't lose heart. Don't be despondent. You would be victorious if you are believers. Not only was there a consolation, there was also a goal and a vision to work towards. Don't be despondent. Don't lose heart. Be true believers, and Allah will grant you victory. So there was consolation, there was sympathizing, and yet at the same time there's a vision for you to look towards. Then Allah Ta'ala says, إِيَمْسَسْكُمْ كَرْهٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ كَرْهٌ مِثْلُهُ. If you have been wounded, the very nature of the war is they have also been wounded. They are suffering psychological scars. The enemy are still suffering. Yes, there might be a greater scale happening with us at the moment. But if you have been wounded, they have also been wounded. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And these are the days that we rotate amongst people. Sometimes there will be victory, sometimes there will be setback. Don't be deterred by that. Don't make your decisions based on that. And perhaps one of the greatest lesson of this, when I read this verse, I shudder. And I'm going to try my utmost to put it in the most respectable terms. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ. Muhammad is a Rasul of Almighty Allah. قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ. Before him there were other prophets and messengers. أَفَإِمْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ إِنْ قَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ. Of course, we know that in the Battle of Uhud, the cry went, إِنَّ مُحَمَّدًا قَدْ مَاتَ. Muhammad has been killed. The Sahaba found it very difficult after that. So much so that some people, they lost and they became disheartened and they said, what is the use of fighting after the Muhammad has passed on? And Nabi Karim Sallallahu with great difficulty got up on the mountain and he said, oh people, oh my companions, come towards me. Allah Ta'ala on this, after the battle, revealed this verse. If Muhammad dies, or even, aliyadu billah, even if he was to be killed, in qalabtum ala aqabikum, are you going to turn against religion? Let me put it this way. Even if in a battle, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam were to be martyred, and Allah Ta'ala had his wisdom that he wasn't martyred, right? But even if he were to be, then too do not lose faith in Allah. Then too do not turn against your religion. Then too remain steadfast upon your religion. If the Muhammad was to be martyred, you don't lose faith and you do not become despondent, then we will say the same thing. Even if the children who are being killed pains and hurts us, we will not become despondent and we will never even have an iota of doubt with regard to the truthfulness of our religion. It's such a great lesson. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gave them such great glad tidings. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. Do not ever say the people who have passed on in the path of Almighty Allah, they are dead. They are alive, but you can't perceive their livelihood. How they are alive. They are alive. Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said in one hadith, Allah Ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah in Jannah will tell the martyr, tell me what you want. You sacrifice your life in my cause. Tell me what you want, that I can give it back to you. I can reward you whatever you want. And he will say, Wallah, you gave us Jannah. You gave us everything. What else can we want? We don't want anything else. You have rewarded us sufficiently. And when Allah will insist, the martyr will say, Wallah, if you want to give us something, send us back to the earth and let us sacrifice our life once again in your path. Let us sacrifice our life once again in your path. The joy we got in sacrificing our life in your path, give us the joy again. My dear respected elders and brothers, we can go on making mention of these type of things. And there was weakness in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There was this, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and I will just conclude with this. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed by a family which is very well known in our history, the family of Yasir. Right? The family of Yasir were being persecuted because they were poor. They were helpless. So the people and the tyrants of the Quraysh, they targeted them for persecution. They whipped them mercilessly. There was a woman by the name of Zanira. She was whipped so much that she became blind. Umar radiallahu anhu used to whip her before he accepted Islam. And then he used to put his whip away and said, I am stopping to beat you not because I have pity upon you, because I am tired now. I can't beat you further. When she became blind, they said, Lat al-Uzza made her blind. She came to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made dua for her. Her eyesight was restored. And the way they changed the narrative, they said Muhammad's magic brought back her eyesight. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed by them. Can you imagine Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam couldn't do anything? Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was weak. And they were being persecuted solely because they brought iman upon Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He passed by them. What did he say? Isbiru ala Yasir, fa innahu ilakumul Jannah. Have sabr, O family of Yasir. Yasir's wife was Sumayya. Abu Jahl hit her and pierced her with a spear in her midriff, and she passed away. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told them, Isbiru ala Yasir. O family of Yasir, have sabr, fa innahu ilakumul Jannah. Our meeting place is Jannah. So we must be very clear, my dear respected brothers. I've just made mention of 4 or 5 salient points of truth and falsehood. Let us all strive to be on the path of truth, even and despite the challenges. May Allah give us the tawfiq. Alhamdulillah.